Nice and easy. Okay, absolute values.
Wait.
What?
The chapter 9 practice thing wasn't for March, right?
The chapter 9 practice
Were you
thing.
doing some practice? We used like that.
No, it was not. No.
I saw my signature, I was just wondering.
No, because if you read it, it says not for marks, just for the answer key. I even put that in the description. It's worth 0. Like it's worth 0 marks, so. Okay. Okay, so what you need to know is absolute values have a set of brackets that have, Jonah, that have bracket properties, but do different things. So in absolute values, you see that I put like A, these straight lines are the absolute value brackets, okay? So they're new and they do something very different, but they also have the properties of regular brackets, right? Like if there was a number in front of it, that would be like having a 3 outside of the bracket. You would end up having to multiply it in once you've evaluated the absolute. So absolute brackets, and you need to make sure they're bigger than the numbers so they don't look like ones. Does that make sense to everybody? They need to be a little bit taller. So absolute values are written in this, okay? And they are positive numbers only. The best thing I can do to describe it is their distance away from 0. Or like when you're driving back and forth to Winnipeg, our distances are given in absolute values. Your vectors, if you've taken physics, they have positive and negative values. Absolute negates the negative. When you're driving down to Winnipeg, it's 756 kilometers south. It doesn't say negative 756 coming north, does it? No, I've never seen a negative sign on a distance. So it's done an absolute value because it doesn't take into consideration the direction. So like if on a number line we go to 6, we know that from 0 to 6 has a distance of 6. Now in math, if we go to -8, we usually say, oh, from 0, and the negative tells us what direction we're traveling on that number line. But the absolute value is just 8. I'm 8 units away from 0, either left or right, okay? So, absolute values. The absolute value of a positive number is just itself. But the absolute value of a negative number is the positive version of itself. Okay, so absolute brackets take away the negative. Okay, it's about the distance away from 0 and we don't care about direction. Oh, the absolute value of 0 is 0. I don't know if you need to know that, but you probably will. Okay, so we're going to order these, yeah, sir?
It says an absolute value will have 2 possible answers.
Right, sorry. The absolute value, similar to square roots, I was talking about this one in here. They're both absolute to a positive value of 5. So positive 5 gives me an answer of 5, and -5, absolute of -5 gives me 5. So both of them will give me the exact same answer. Okay, so now we're going to do this. And these ones are tough because you've got to pay attention to the lines. Order the following real numbers. So real numbers are all decimals, roots, everything. And we're going to place them in ascending order. What does ascending mean? Smallest to biggest. So smallest to biggest here. All right, what is the absolute value of 3.5?
3.5.
3.5. Does -2 have absolute value brackets around it?
Yes. No.
No. So you just got to pay attention to that. So that one's just going to be -2. I'm just switching colors so that they don't get. What is the absolute value of -5.75? Positive 5.75. Is 1.05 in absolute? No, so that is just itself. What about that fraction, negative 13 over 4? 3.25. Positive, right? Because it's in the absolute value brackets. And this one here, oh, I didn't switch colors. Trying to keep my pattern going here. This one here is going to be a positive 0.5. And then this one would be a negative 1.25. It's not in absolute brackets. So you just kind of have to pay attention. Easy to mess it up when you are rushing. And this would be a positive 3.3 repeating. Okay, so when you go to order them, you have to put them back into their original form. Okay, so what's the smallest number in this list? Negative 2. Okay, and that one wasn't in anything, so that one's gone. What comes next? Negative 1.25. So that one's gone. And those were both the original form. Okay, what one's next? 0.5, but it's in an absolute, so we're going to write it in its original form. That one's gone. I guess I should cross these out as I go. What's next? 1.05, and there's not in absolute, so we're just going to write it. Next up.
3.3?
Nope.
3.25?
Negative 13 over 4, because that's the 3.25 is a little bit smaller than 3.3, right? Would you rather have $3.25 or $3.33? There you go, math. Look at that. Okay, and then next up would be the negative absolute value of negative 3 1/3. So that one's gone. That's gone. Next is the absolute value of 3.5 and the absolute value of negative 5.75. Okay, pretty straightforward. This lesson is going to be really quick to do, and hopefully it doesn't cause you too many problems. So little froggy down here says, so an absolute value gives you a positive answer. And that's when we're dealing with numbers, okay? When we get to variables, there's some like x can be a negative based on what else is in the absolute bracket, but we're not there today. Okay, so this is where I said absolute is going to do a couple of things. It's going to evaluate a negative number to a positive, but it's also going to have those same principles as regular brackets. So that 3 is multiplied by everything inside the bracket. But what do we do first in order of operations? Simplify what? What's in the brackets? So we have 5 minus 3, absolute value, negative 5. Now what we're going to do is we are going to evaluate. We're going to evaluate the absolute. So our next step is we're going to do this. So what is the absolute value of negative 5? Positive 5. So we're going to have 5 minus 3, and I'm changing it to round brackets because we've done the evaluation of the absolute. So order of operations tells me to multiply next, so I'm going to have 5 minus 15, and then I can go ahead and subtract, and I'll get a negative 10. So the absolute itself will evaluate positive, but there's other math that happens outside of the absolute bracket, so you might end up with a negative answer. But it's the number inside the absolute that will evaluate to positive. Make sense? Okay, you guys do this one. Okay. Yeah. No, what's your question?
Is this the answer?
Yep.
Also, can I talk to you about, the quiz number one?
Right now?
Not right now, but after the class.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Okay. So, if I show you what I got here, this is why I want the absolute brackets longer, just so that it doesn't look like more ones in this. So, 12 times negative 3 is a negative 36, plus 5 squared is 25. Add them together, you get the absolute value of negative 11, and that would evaluate to positive 11. You don't want to leave it here because there's still more math to do. This wouldn't be considered finished if you left it in absolute brackets. You guys good with that? Okay, word problems come up a lot in absolute values, especially these really easier ones to deal with. Okay, Kelly works in a hospital. Perfect. One day she takes the elevator from the first floor up to the 6th floor to see her supervising doctor. Then she has to go to the 2nd floor to work in the gift shop for an hour. Then after lunch, she goes to the 4th floor to visit patients and down to the 1st floor to greet visitors and give directions. What's the total change in floors that Kelly has done that day?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 4.
Okay. The total change in floors. Doesn't matter if I went up or down, it's just how many floors did I walk that day? Oh, I'm taking the elevator. I'm not walking, sorry. Okay, so if I start at floor 1, if I start on the main floor and I go up to the 6th, if I go up to the 6th, how many floors did I go up?
6.
5.
5. So my first trip of the day, I've gone up 5. So I'm going to use that as positive because usually, like we're thinking of the y-axis, above 0 is 5 and the upward direction is 5. No, I'm doing it for our example just so you kind of get the feel of it, but if there's no sign there, I'll assume it's 5. Then she has to go to the 2nd floor. So I was at 6 and now I'm going to 2.
4.
So I'm going down 4 floors. And then where do I go? I go to the 4th floor from the 2nd.
2.
2, but we're going upwards 2. And then I go back down to the 1st floor.
1.
Well, I was on the 4th floor, and I'm going to floor number 1. I'm going down 3, right? So if we were to evaluate these and you want to know how many floors I covered in that day, we're just going to evaluate. So 5 plus 4 plus 2 plus 3. Does that make sense to everybody? So really, lesson 1, not hard. Lesson 2, this unit isn't really hard. That's it. That's all. Holy cannoli.